Semites are the Jews and all their cousins in the Middle East. And unfortunately, our own ancestor in that mix is Ham. And because Ham was the one that looked upon his father's nakedness, he came into disfavor on that account. And that was tantamount to a curse. In fact, Noah, what he did was that he cursed his descendants. And that is the reason for the backwardness of Africa. In the New Testament, when Jesus was about to fulfill the ultimate sacrifice and to satisfy the claims of divine justice, there were a few requirements that must be satisfied if our redemption will be efficacious. The prototype that Jesus was fulfilling in that progression that took place to the point of slaughter was the prototype of the scapegoat. Now, the idea behind the scapegoat is that two goats are brought before the priest. The priest sacrifices the first goat, and then the priest now curses the second goat with all of the sin of the land. And because of the curse that is on that goat, if the goat is released and it goes into the wilderness, it will die in the wilderness. Jesus fulfilled the two goats, but you see, in keeping with the prototype of the scapegoat, if he dies within the walls of Jerusalem, our salvation would have been null and void, because the scapegoat will have to die outside of the walls of the city in order for the prototype to be adequately fulfilled and for the claims of divine justice to be satisfied. And it happens to be that when Jesus was to die, the sons of Shem condemned him to death. The sons of Shem, representative of their leader, the high priest, was the one that gave him up to death. In the metrics of the scenario of his death, it was the son of Japheth that condemned him according to Roman law. Pilate was the son of Japheth. And in keeping with the redemption of humanity, God had only one family left to work with. He couldn't work with the sons of Shem again because they had condemned him. He couldn't work with the sons of Japheth again because Pilate used his office to condemn Jesus, and God had only one family left. And suddenly, as the procession began, if you study the story very well, you'll find that Jesus lost blood in 7 places. The life of the flesh happens to be blood. And since Jesus had put on the structure of man, then blood was a requirement for whether or not he would live or die, and he had lost blood in 7 places. So the weakness that he had was because of lack of blood. And as he held the cross without strength in his body, moving towards the place of his crucifixion, if Jesus had died within the walls of Jerusalem, our redemption would have been vain, because the scapegoat was destined to go outside of the walls of the land before he dies. I want you to see how slim the chance that heaven had in this matter. Heaven couldn't walk with the sons of Shem. Heaven couldn't walk with the sons of Japheth, and Jesus can't cope with the burden of that cross enough to take it outside of the walls of the city. That was a day that heaven prayed, waiting for earth to answer. I don't know what brought Simon the Cyrenian on the scene. Cyrene is in Libya. An African is not supposed to be in that place. The cross was not part of the business. And suddenly the sovereignty of God went to work, and it was a son of Ham that bore that cross and took it outside of the walls to the place where divine justice was satisfied. And Simon the Cyrenian happened to be a citizen of Libya. I believe that Libya will not be a nation of the bondwoman forever, as long as Simon the Cyrenian was part of the politics that made Golgotha a possibility. And it happens to be that our God has a good memory. You know, Egypt was the place that Jesus was taken and hidden from the vengeance of the king of the time. I believe that Egypt will not be fallow of life, that God will still return to the land of Egypt. It's even captured in prophecy that God will return, that the revival is going to affect Egypt. It's captured in the Bible. There were prophets that saw it and declared it. We came to send a signal that the season for Africa to fulfill her prophetic destiny just broke on us. The scripture that I read to you is prophetic. I believe that scripture was written to Africans. It said, let us go forth therefore unto him. Where? Without the camp. It is Africa that will bear the last message of the kingdom, like Simon the Cyrenian had to bear the cross to the nations of the world. That's the prophetic significance of that drama. God has kept the sons and the daughters of Africa to be the last witness that will bring about the actualization of the dreams of the kingdom of heaven. Saviors will come from among us. So if God has shown us the pattern through scripture, that in the end of days is Africa that will actually carry the most accurate message, which is the message of the cross, to the nations of the world. It happens to be that Nigeria is the most populous black nation. If God has an intention to visit with black people, then you need to know that the most populous black nation is in the spotlight, and most of our challenges is because of our destiny. Let me give you a little insight about the little understanding I have about this season. First understanding I have is that it's a time of revival. It's a time of a great awakening. The kind of awakening I'm talking about is something that is much more than everything revival we have read about. If you take revival out of the context, you'll not be able to understand the battle of several nations. There are some characteristics that nations that hosted revival had. First of all, it must be a place that is a melting point of different tribes, so that when God lights a fire, that fire can be translated into numerous possible languages, and the impact will get to the grassroots. The reason why Nigeria is in the spotlight in terms of upheavals, in terms of battles, in terms of stability, in terms of peace, is because of the potentials he has before God as a nation. Yes, when we look around, we'll see how incapable our governments have been. You see, the reason why things are the way they are is to bring it to the point where the world system itself knows it doesn't have the solution to the problems of the earth. And then Zion will begin to manifest as strength. And the day for Africa to bring direction to the nations of the world has come. And in keeping with this, there's unique dimensions of the grace of God that is going to be unleashed. A new wave of ministry. Many people think adjustment is salvation. Many people think blending of colors is excellence. Many people think positive thinking is the gospel, because there's always a mundane presentation that is designed to represent things that can only be held up in glory. And the African church, the church among the blacks, will be the church that will be bold enough to restore the gospel of the kingdom to the nations. And so this is the message to Africa, that we are going to have to bear the reproach of Christ